Great. All right, so good morning again, everyone. My name is Sandy Miswitz. I'm a principal transportation planner with the Capital District Transportation Committee. This is the second meeting of the Community Planner Forum for 2021. We have a pretty robust agenda today, so I'm going to share my screen quickly and walk through what we've got for you today. My apologies for not being already in this. So today's agenda, we're going to have a couple of presentations. The first one will be on the Joint Technical Assistance Program with CDRPC and CDTC. We'd like to kind of highlight what's been happening over the last couple of years running the program and some of the things that we've been learning. We also will be hearing from CDTA on an update on their MicroTransit pilot program, also known as CDTA Flex. We'll talk about an update on the Transit Access Toolkit in development, and we'll talk about some other planning updates, workshops, and some other local planning updates as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our set of presenters today, starting with Kate Maynard. We have Mark Castiglione, both of which are, of course, from CDRPC, and Andrew Tracy from CDTC will also be a presenter. So Kate, take it away.
Sandy, can you please let me screen share?
Absolutely. You should be all set.
Okay, thanks. Okay, there you go. Mark, did you want to kick off?
Sure. Thanks, Kate.
Absolutely.
Happy to be here this morning. Unfortunately, I can't stay the entire meeting, but I'm glad we're providing this recap of our technical assistance program. When I first approached CDTC with this idea, I think we kind of put our heads together and, really looked to this kind of program to answer a couple questions and some, I think, longer term goals that both of our agencies shared. And I think the first one is, engaging communities that aren't already around the table. How do we reach out to folks that aren't coming to the planning committee meeting, aren't coming to this forum, and how can we continue to advance in that way priorities of the new visions plan for folks that haven't necessarily seen it or heard about it. How can we provide practical benefits to communities that don't have a lot of capacity in this regard? How can we sort of use these projects to sort of like inception, like the concept of inception, to insert these priorities and principles into the deliverables that we're getting them? How do we help communities tee up projects, larger projects, more significant projects? How can we develop something that they can use as a stepping stone, either to a future linkage application or a CFA grant or a larger transportation grant? One of the considerations when we got this project off the ground, this program, was the perception that we'd be competing with private sector planners. And so in those early conversations, we sort of talked to some folks in the private planning community, and really we're trying to position this program in its entirety to focus on stepping stone type projects, small projects that have really short timeline, and something that again communities can use to build on. Not necessarily the kinds of projects that communities would put out for RFP, but something that maybe would help them develop programs and projects that would require an RFP. And of course, I think one of the things that CDTC has been in the vanguard on for a number of years is really making that strong use and transportation connection, which of course is clear in the linkage program. And this is sort of, again, reinforcing that in a way that hopefully engages a broader cross-section of our stakeholders in the region and provides benefits to communities at the same time. So with that, that was sort of the origin story, and I'll turn it back over to Kate to walk us through an update about where we've been and where we are and where we're going.
Great, thanks, Mark. So I'm just going to advance the slide here. This is a CDTC slide, so I think it largely reflects what's on the website. The email address to find this information is cdtcmpo.org/techassist. We also have a webpage on CRPC's website, but this is kind of a common place you can go to find all the information and past projects, I believe, as well. So in terms of this, the slide really reflects a lot of what Mark noted. In terms of the eligible projects, the desire is to really provide for assistance for small scale, short duration projects. So some of the inquiries we received are maybe a better match for other programming or other funding sources. This is really designed to serve either a specific project need and be able to complete it, or as Mark noted, we've seen a lot of projects that are brought forward to tee something up. One particular item is comprehensive plan updates. So that's something we've noticed within the region is it's great. A lot of communities are proceeding with their comprehensive planning. And we found that this program is one kind of finite project that we've worked on is a great way to provide the existing condition data, the mapping, what might be an early foundation for the efforts, and also a way to maximize what might be finite consultant budgets and the ability to get the work done in the time frame specified. The process we find is definitely collaborative, but it's designed to really walk through your ideas for a potential project. So you see here, there's a pre-application meeting. The email's there to reach out with project ideas. We'll set up a meeting, walk through what your project overall is, give you early feedback in terms of how that is either eligible or thoughts on how it's not. So that we find is a pretty interactive, effective process to be able to move forward. Eligible projects, you see the list here. Everything from community design assessment, I won't read them all, data collection, general community planning, recreation trail planning, zoning site planning, transportation safety and operations planning. So through here and through your knowledge of CDTC and CDRPC, you can see there's kind of that bridge between either land use transportation projects as a whole, or what might be a more land use focused project or a more transportation focused project. So we work collaboratively between our two organizations in terms of what the needs are and suss out how best to apply staffing depending on the project to be able to assist you in the best way in terms of our capacities. Okay, a note here, and I'm going to end the presentation with this as well. What's new with this program is that applications will be accepted through December 1st, 2021. So that's been a goal overall, is to increase the flexibility of when you can apply. So it's really as your needs arise, you can apply for your project with that December 1st thought in mind. And Sandy, that may be something in the future that continues. That's something that's unknown at this point, correct? Okay, so we'll go December 1st for now. Okay. In our recent newsletter, Josh Toshi in our office did up this kind of helpful infographic. So this just kind of highlights some of the program overall impacts and benefits since its inception. So as Mark noted, the program was really initiated back in 2018. Since then, we have 15 plus projects under our belts that really range in terms of different overviews and specific focus as we've gone through them. Overall, the value that we've calculated is over $170,000. That's between the staff time as well as the match by the communities in terms of the overall regional projects. Three program highlights here just really kind of illustrate what we were saying, is that it's a diverse project in terms of what the focus can be. So the first one, Bethlehem Growth Analysis, was done in 2019. And that was really looking at the town desired analysis of really understanding the growth that's been taking place currently or more recently versus historic trends. I'm not sure if Rob is on today. I don't think I see him, but that's one that the town appears to have really utilized as a foundation for their comprehensive planning efforts and their current moratorium and potentially affordable projects or housing projects potentially moving forward on the basis of this third-party analysis that was completed in terms of their growth. So that was really kind of more focused on land use, data analysis, and trends. Glenville was really kind of a compilation of land use and transportation, really completing an audit of the zoning and really understanding how the goals and recommendations laid out in a comprehensive plan were or were not completely implemented through the zoning regulations. So the town really wanted to look at that as a focus. Manans was a more focused project in terms of subject matter. And Manans has really identified food accessibility as a real issue for them since Price Chopper moved out of their village boundaries. So through this, we were able to complete a honed-in project, an analysis of what food opportunities were inside, outside the community. And we really took approach of low-hanging fruit. What could be done now to increase food accessibility, whether it's modern options of food delivery, whether it's enhancing existing small stores in the village to have more fresh produce and a larger variety of food available within the stores, those sort of measures. Here's just a list. I touched on a couple of them already, obviously, but this is just a list of projects that have been completed since 2018. I won't go through all of these. I believe, Sandy, this will be available, the slides, to all the attendees, so you can take a look if you're curious. But I think the real goal here is just to note the number of projects that have been completed, the diversity of communities. So you have counties, you have towns, villages, cities, you have more intermunicipal efforts. So again, the goal is flexibility here in terms of what communities' needs are, and to be able to apply that short duration, smaller scale planning effort to complete that. To cite a couple that you see here, you have everything from trail planning assistance with Schenectady County. You have Town of Wilton, Route 50 corridor analysis, and I mentioned the other ones here. A couple other examples. Again, a trend definitely of getting ready for comprehensive planning as a whole. The city of Rensselaer was another community that we assisted with their comprehensive plan update assistance. So with that, one product was synthesizing, taking a look at prior planning efforts, placing into a matrix what the plan recommendations were, and providing a tool for the city to move forward and understand and analyze what's been implemented, what's not, what's still relevant as they move forward into their comprehensive planning process. So sometimes it's that additional almost staffing capacity that's desired, or a third party point of view to complete the work we found is of value. A lot of mapping, that's another theme I would note. So Town of Clinton Park is an example of that. I think I saw Jen on here as well. So please chime in with any thoughts in terms of the project. But basically, with their GEIS efforts in the western part of Clifton Park, there was mapping and analysis that was completed to aid them in their overall updates and planning and implementation activities. Town of Westerlo, another example, a more rural community in our region. They also needed assistance with existing conditions report and mapping overall. Current projects recently completed or underway. Recently completed, the Town of Colony. They were really interested in a particular tool and its application to their future planning efforts. So we all completed a green area ratio zoning analysis in terms of the concept as a whole, best practices from where it's been implemented, and what it could look like to implement for the Town of Colony. So working with their staff as a whole. City of Troy, that's underway currently. We're looking at their sanitary sewer capacity and where they have infrastructure that is also utilized as receiving sanitary from other surrounding communities. So it's really an intermunicipal analysis that's underway with that. Fourth is the Village of Ballston Spa, a comprehensive plan update assistance. And we're actually going to talk about that a little bit on this next slide here. I know we have Liz Cormos here with us as well. So with this project, definitely under the umbrella of that theme I mentioned earlier, the village approached us in terms of technical assistance in getting ready for their comprehensive plan update. They've been very active in terms of their planning as of late. They have a linkage study underway. They have a tree inventory underway as well. So the economic development plan as well that was completed with Prosperity Partnership. So their effort really involved a host of what we've seen as kind of the getting ready portion for an effort such as this, with existing conditions report and mapping, the prior plan summary and matrix of recommendations. What they specifically wanted, which we were able to assist them with, is their RFP scope and what they're putting out within that document to highlight and be able to specify their needs for consultant services and secure those. Behind the scenes, one of the efforts that we were able to work with the village on is to really understand what resources were available to them, had already been utilized, and be able to feed those efforts where possible into the comprehensive planning efforts. So for example, mapping from the county that had been completed prior, what will be coming out of the linkage study that CDTC has underway with the community. We scanned in very old maps and made those available to the community as a whole and for these future efforts. So I think this project really highlights the ability to work where community's at and offer the ability to kind of assist in terms of what the needs are in moving forward and really getting them ready for an efficient, effective, comprehensive planning process. You know, that's what Liz and others are hoping as well. And this slide just kind of documents some of the products that are an outcome of this effort. Obviously, very small highlights of larger documents and work products, but on the left, you have an example of mapping that was completed. So there's a number of maps that were provided that are a good foundation for the efforts that are going to be following with the comprehensive plan update, whether it's land use based. They're really focused on their downtown and what the needs might be there. On the right, you see inflow, outflow. So just one part of the analysis, which really looked at who's coming into the village on a daily basis, who's leaving for jobs, and what that looks like. So some of these are kind of more recent questions that have been highlighted in terms of remote work, if it's here to stay, if it will be a hybrid of sorts, et cetera, that have been brought forward by the village and definitely of interest, as well as overall existing concerns and focus points within that comprehensive planning efforts. The memo is the first summary to assist the village in taking a look at the RFP and trying to really work to, again, gain efficiencies with existing resources, as well as provide highlight and focus in that RFP as the village and city they wanted to be putting out for those consultant services. And Liz, I would invite you to just share any thoughts you might have, given that we're almost at the end of this process, and just anything you have to share with the group. Oh, Liz, you're on mute.
Think I would have
There you
got
go.
out Zooms by now to learn that. This process
Common thing.
has been invaluable, every part of it. The last time the village did a complete comprehensive plan with full maps and everything was 1965. There was an update in 2003, but it didn't, look at all of this information. And, we have very little that's been scanned or is digitized. So this was extremely valuable, and the help on the RFP was also, it was a very smooth process, very interactive, and extremely valuable, to the village. So I would recommend anybody that's got a project similar to this to look into this. It was a great opportunity for us.
Thanks, Liz. That's helpful. And if anyone has any questions as we move forward to ask Liz or anyone else, definitely welcome those as well. But we're in the process. We're literally at that final review for those documents and getting those to you. And you're getting your RFP out, correct, for the comprehensive plan?
I have a stack of proposals sitting on my desk to open. And I guess the one thing I would mention, if you are a small community, is the quality of the data. Frankly, which you can't do anything about, is the census data and the American Community Survey. When you get down to small numbers, the margin of error becomes significant, and we end up with a report that there are no males over the age of from 85 in the village, and we know there are. So, we hope that'll be corrected once the 2020 census, but that's something to sort of pay attention to. Some of the data can end up looking a little screwy just because of the sampling. So, if there's, I don't know if there's a solution to that, but otherwise, this was a very comprehensive scan of data available from both agencies and public data, and as well as putting in the data that we had internally in a hard copy somewhere. And now it's digitized and available to everybody.
And Kate, are you still with us? It looks like you might have frozen.
I think she's frozen.
Yeah. Let me see if I can pull up the PowerPoint.
Very sharp eyes, which were appreciated on the reviewer side.
Bear with me just a minute, folks, and I'll try to pull up the power. Oh,
My back.
you are back. Thanks, Kate.
Okay.
Yep,
I
you froze up
apologize
there.
for that. All of a sudden it went unstable, which we're all familiar with, and then it was just gone. So the only thing I was saying was agreeing with Liz, if this part cut off, so I'll just repeat it briefly, is that absolutely, when you look at the data sources, and we did provide a description of that margin of error, but when you do get down to the smaller level of what might be a smaller population in this case, it was a little disconcerting. We had some sharp eyes for reviewing the documents. Wait a minute, there's got to be more than 0 men at a certain age, within our village. So MC data, et cetera, brought forward. I'm going to move forward and be able to have Andrew speak to the East Greenbush project.
Okay, thank you very much, Kate. Good morning, everybody. My name is Andrew Tracy from CDTC, Senior Transportation Engineer. I'll speak to a recently completed Tech Assist project we worked on with the town of East Greenbush, the Gilligan Road Complete Streets Enhancement Feasibility Study. The purpose of this study was to identify bike ped options for Gilligan Road. The town requested that we study safe, separated, supporting infrastructure on the Gilligan Road corridor. The scope of work is listed on this slide. We completed a lit review of all the prior planning efforts that involved Gilligan Road, compiled an existing conditions assessment, which I'll speak to briefly in a couple of slides. We worked with local stakeholders to identify potential alignments for trails, side paths, bike ped connection options. And then we ended the report with doing a review of all of the best practices and all of the guidance available on these sorts of trails, and compiling the best and most relevant recommendations for Gilligan Road. So if you could advance to the next slide. Just a quick overview of the study area. Gilligan Road, a little under a mile long, and it connects Route US 9 and 20 Columbia Turnpike to Hayes Road. There's a number of trip attractors on the roadway. The major landmark is Goff Middle School, which you can see there on the map. Students have, there's no sidewalks on Gilligan Road. There's no safe way to walk to school yet. So one of the major planning goals of this study was to try to connect Goff to the surrounding neighborhoods safely, so that students can get to school. There's a number of other trip attractors on that roadway as well, called out on that map. Posted speed is 25 miles per hour. If you go to the next slide, the first step was to complete a literature review of all the prior planning efforts that involved Gilligan Road. We took a look at a lot of information that the town provided, including notes from the East Greenbush Traffic Safety Committee dating all the way back to 2005. This roadway has been on their radar for a very long time. We looked at the town's land use plan and zoning study, their amenities plan. The town of East Greenbush also has a complete streets policy. One of the most important recent planning efforts pictured here was the Complete Streets workshop, which was also done with CDTC staff back in 2018. And as part of this workshop, a number of roadways in East Greenbush were examined, including Gilligan Road, and some basic concepts were laid out for what a side path or a trail might look like on this corridor. And importantly, there was a lot of great feedback obtained from locals and from stakeholders on this corridor that really helped inform the Tech Assist study that we did. So if you go to the next slide, the next step, CDTC staff and CDRPC staff worked on an existing conditions assessment. We looked at all of the data available on vehicle travel on the roadway. We looked at historic traffic to see if there was any growth in traffic. We looked at data from NISTOT's roadway information system, their risks. We did have data on pavement condition as well that had been collected by CDTC. CDRPC prepared a number of maps, including elevation maps, which helped with trail planning due to some steep gradients on certain portions of Gilligan Road. CDRPC prepared right-of-way maps as well, which were very helpful, a number of other maps. And all of this data helped us propose potential trail alignments. We also looked at all of the intersections in the study area as well and identified potential constraints to trail crossings and the trail alignments relating to side streets. If you go to the next slide, Kate, as part of the existing conditions assessment, we also did some safety analysis. We looked at 5 years of crash data. On the corridor, there were 19 crashes. We looked at the data in a number of ways. We identified crash clusters and we mapped the crashes. You can see those on the map on the right. We also took a deeper look into an earlier crash back in 2004. This was a crash that was studied and discussed a lot by the East Greenbush Traffic Safety Committee. A fatal accident in 2004 involving a student crossing Gilligan Road near Goff Middle School. And that accident was one of the earliest impetuses for discussing complete streets options for Gilligan Road. So we included a write-up on that crash as well as part of the existing conditions report. If you go to the next slide, Kate. Following, we had a number of discussions with the local stakeholders on constraints to the trail alignments, and that culminated in this map you see here, which is a map of all of the potential trail alignments, both for short-term phases, which have funding available, and for future phases to connect Gilligan Road to nearby communities or neighborhoods rather. The town identified sewer easements, which you could see as the blue and purple dashed lines there on the map, that could be used to connect the trail to nearby neighborhoods as part of future phases. A portion of trail nearby is being built by a planned development district, so we put that on the map as well, along with the connection to it. This map went through a number of revisions as we discussed with local stakeholders. What some of the constraints to the alignment are, but it's helpful in that it lays out sort of a long-term roadmap for future improvements done in phases to Gilligan Road. If you go to the next slide, Kate. CDTC staff reviewed a lot of different sources on bike ped guidance and trail guidance. We looked at the Empire State Trail Design Guide. You can see some of the recommendations for trails and side path are pictured here. We looked at the NACTO Urban Bikeways Design Guide, some AASHTO materials, and FHWA's STEP guidance, the Safe Transportation for Every Pedestrian guidance, which was very helpful. We looked at all this guidance and we distilled down the best and most relevant recommendations for Gilligan Road in the report. We looked at the best guidance relating to the design of the trail in terms of cross-section and separation from the roadway, guidance on trail gradients, and also guidance on trail crossings. If you go to the next slide, there were a few places where the proposed alignment would cross either Gilligan Road or side streets. So we compiled some of the best practices and best recommendations from Federal Highway and other sources on how to accommodate that. Pictured here, some of the step guidance from Federal Highway that would certainly be applicable to all the crossings on Gilligan Road. On the final slide, if you go one more, we also found local examples of trail crossings. Pictured here, we had a number of others as well. And we provided these examples to local stakeholders to give them an idea of what sorts of improvements were possible on Gilligan Road and what the specific recommendations actually look like. For example, RRFBs or signalized crossings. There's a number of them in our region. The ones pictured here are actually very nearby to the study area. These are on the Albany-Hudson Electric Trail, also in East Greenbush. So they were great local examples that we could hold up to give kind of a vision for Gilligan Road. So the town took the final report that we prepared. They have a design consultant on board designing phase 1 of the trail, which is the portion nearest to Goff Middle School. I believe Adam's on the call. Adam, if there's any additional thoughts or that you'd like to contribute, please feel free. But overall, I think the impression I got from local stakeholders is that this report was a very helpful first step, and turning over all this material to the design consultant was helpful, and it provided a good longer term vision as well for connections from Gilligan Road to other trails in the rest of the community.
Yeah, Andrew, thank you. I'll just briefly, from a project standpoint, we've, my department, the CDTC and CDRPC, as well as the our consultant, which is GPI. I just wanted to say that you guys have not allowed us to extend, the funding that was available for this, this feasibility study, and also that the sort of resources we brought to bear on this, cobbled together isn't the right word, but we kind of had different people doing different parts of this, and I just wanted to say, Andrew and Kate, your team have been great in terms of being flexible to kind of work with us to manage this project and really, bring it together, because we did bring, a couple of different, resources together. And just a quick update. For other municipalities, this program can really extend if you have a limited consultant budget, or you're kind of unsure about how far you're going to get with a particular initiative. This program really can allow you to extend and to get a little bit further than you might otherwise would, with some really capable resources. And we had a public hearing last night on this. The public that came out to speak about it were pretty supportive. We have a part of the project would be constructed on school property, and we have a meeting later this month with the school district in order to see sort of the final design, working with their consultants, as well as sort of the funding and capital planning side to wrap it into their facilities program. So I'm hoping that next month we'll be able to adopt this and then have a plan for construction and and continued kind of connectivity. So yeah, thank you again, and thanks for the opportunity to say a few things here.
Okay, thank you very much, Adam, for all the kind words. Very helpful. I'll turn things back over to Kate now, I suppose.
Sure. So just in closing, you'll have the information in this presentation if anything's helpful for potential projects you're looking at. Here's again just the sense for getting in touch. You can email us at our pre-application meeting. Let us know what you're thinking, any questions, etc. And again, it is a rolling deadline as of now until December 1st, 2021. We're hopeful that will continue, but we'll see as we kind of approach that date what that is. So if there's any questions, we can answer them here. But otherwise, let us know of any future projects or questions.
Great, thanks. Thank you, Kate, Mark, and Andrew for the overview of our technical assistance program. You know, from CDTC's perspective, you know, we see this collaboration as really setting the foundation for future planning work, whether that leads to comprehensive plans, submissions for linkage program funding. So, you know, we appreciate the partnership and all the work that's been done to date. So thank you, everybody. The next item is a presentation on the MicroTransit pilot at CDTA. So I will be turning the next segment over to Mike Williams at CDTA.
Hey, Sandy. This is actually going to be started by Lindsay Garney, our mobility manager, but I'll be running the presentation. So I'm going to share my screen right now, and I will come in about halfway through the presentation to do a segment on fixed routes as relates to MicroTransit. So here goes.
Great. Thanks, Lindsay. Thanks, Mike.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Can I confirm that everyone can see this?
Yep.
All right. Lindsay, you can take it away.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks for the opportunity and the invitation to talk about our newest service here, Flex, our MicroTransit on-demand ride-sharing service that we launched in January of 2020. So we've got a good 18 months of experience running this new service. So I'm going to talk about the operational side of it, and as Mike mentioned, he's going to talk about how we use Flex in conjunction with our fixed route service. Go ahead, Mike. So what is Flex? Just a brief overview for those who aren't familiar. It is CDTA's version of an on-demand ride-sharing program. It runs very similar to an Uber or a Lyft. It's curb-to-curb travel, connections to some of our bigger fixed route stops, connections in Colony to our Red Line BRT service, also Guilderland and Latham, some of our park and rides up in Latham, connections to Latham Farms. So some of our bigger, fixed route areas, we inserted this service polygon in to work with those routes. It is a dedicated service polygon, which we'll show later in the presentation. It's a 16 square mile service area. Also has some dedicated pin drop locations where service goes to that fall outside of the polygon, but we wanted to make sure that we were able to service for populated areas as well. It's a way for us to supplement our fixed route service. So, times and locations that fixed route doesn't necessarily run an efficient service to, we're able to add Flex into those areas and really give our customers options and efficient ride services. Go ahead, Mike. How does it work? As I said before, it works just like an Uber or a Lyft. We work with a company called Transloc. They're out of North Carolina. They built the back end and the software that actually runs the system. So you download the Transloc app, which is that gray square you see there with the bus in the corner. You create an account, name, phone number, email address. And just as you would any ride sharing service, you put your location for pickup and drop off. The system then calculates your pickup times, drop off times, and any, it's a real time service. So any adjustments that the system makes to those times, you get real-time updates for your arrivals and drop-offs, and you can watch those as you're looking at your app once your ride is confirmed and goes into the queue of rides for the service. The algorithm for all of the rides that come into the queue is calculated by the software. So it's constantly trying to figure out the fastest, most efficient way to move as many people around as possible. And that's where the ride sharing component comes in. We do see ride sharing on probably 20 to 25% of the rides that come in every day to the service. So that lets us know that the system is working properly the way that that we want it to, in order to keep moving people around in this large service area. It's run when rides come into the queue. The system calculates the algorithm, as I said, and it sends the rides to tablets inside of the vehicles, which our operators are then directed turn by turn directions to every location that they need to go to, whether they're picking someone up or dropping someone off, or in between those rides, picking someone else up for a ride sharing component. So the image over there is just what it would look like on your smartphone as you're inputting your ride along with the app picture. Go ahead, Mike. Where does it work? And Mike is going to get into this a little bit more with how it works with fixed route, but our idea at CDTA was to find a way to add more service into areas that we didn't feel our fixed route was providing enough service to. So it's a combination of fixed route and these added ride sharing bands that we use to replace less efficient routes, add more service more frequent service, and also provide supplemental service during our off-peak times, such as nights and weekends. For instance, some of the fixed routes that didn't run late at night, we have Flex that covers that area until 10:45 at night. So that's another nice feature that Flex adds in, is we have the vans running at times when fixed route isn't running. So we're constantly trying to move our customers around anytime that they need to. So, and this image here on the right kind of shows the connectivity between fixed route and private cars, and then working Flex in with there, and how an on-demand microtransit system really puts all of those components together. Go ahead, Mike. So Flex so far, as I mentioned, we started our first service for Flex in this Colony Guilderland Latham service polygon, as you can see in this picture. We're up to about 100 rides per day. We've really taken the last 18 months and we've seen all of the ups and downs that the pandemic has presented to us. We started it as a pilot program. The intention was, when we launched in January, to do a 6-month pilot program, fare free at that point. Really give our customers a feel for this new service, help them understand and learn it, and also on our end, help us understand and learn it, and see who was going to use the service, where they were going to go, when they were going to use it. So, when the pandemic hit, we extended the pilot into the fall. We didn't start charging fares until mid to late October. At that point, we implemented a $3 per ride fare for Flex. We wanted to kind of fall in between the price point of what our fixed route service was at $1.50, and then also come in underneath where other ride sharing services are. So we landed on $3 per ride. We also, you can use your Navigator card. We have a 10 trip pass for $25 that has become pretty popular with some of our customers. Gives them a little bit of a discount for those who use Flex all throughout the week and also on weekends. And like our other services, it is half fare available for eligible customers. Over the course of the 18 months that we've been running this service, we've really watched all the data that we've been able to collect for when ridership is most popular. So we've kind of played with the service times a little bit, really to make sure that we're covering times that our customers need us to be there. So right now, Monday through Friday, Flex runs 6 a.m. to 10:45 p.m. We have 3 vans running that entire time. We started out with 2. We quickly realized that adding a 3rd vehicle would bring down wait times and keep the system running smoothly and efficiently. So we now have 3 vans running that entire time. Saturdays and Sundays, we have 2 vans running from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And again, the good thing about Flex is that the polygon is no pun intended, but it is flexible. So as we see areas where we're getting customers requesting that we extend service, we talk to our planning department and we put together the best service polygon that moves people where they need to go, but also provides efficiency. The goal with a ride sharing microtransit service like this is you don't want to extend the polygon too far where the vehicles are getting pulled out in all different directions, and then it no longer becomes efficient. So it's really watching the data, watching our fixed route services, who's riding that, where they're going, and making that service all together as we present here with Flex. Go ahead, Mike.
Great, thanks, Lindsay. So I will take over here and talk a little bit about the interaction between Flex and fixed routes. So as Lindsay described, Flex can provide new coverage to areas that aren't already served by CDTA fixed routes, but it can also replace low ridership routes or segments of routes that don't generate enough ridership to justify continuing at their current levels. Because of the nature of its service design, Flex can cover a larger area than fixed routes with the same or fewer resources. And it works in areas where fixed route doesn't necessarily work because of characteristics like low density, high auto ownership rates, or a lack of pedestrian infrastructure or transit infrastructure. And it works in tandem with fixed route service to provide last mile connections at the termini of routes in areas with low transit propensity. So what we've done in 2020 and in 2021 is apply this Flex model to a series of routes operating within the current Flex polygon in Guilderland and Albany. You have Route 117 running along Fuller Road and Wolf Road from Cross Gates Mall in Guilderland to the airport. Route 155 connecting the same area to the airport via Washington Ave and New Carner Road. And Route 190 from Cross Gates to Latham Farms. So these routes operate in areas with a lower transit propensity, and therefore they generate low ridership. Last year, prompted by the onset of the pandemic, but in accordance with existing plans, CDTA reduced service on these three routes. But having Flex allows us to maintain coverage of these areas during times when the fixed routes are not running. So part of CDTA's service planning strategy over the coming decade is to apply the Flex model to other areas in the transit system. On fixed routes with high ridership, CDTA intends to increase the level of service to match the level of demand. We do this in two ways, increasing frequency and increasing span. Frequency is how often buses serve a given bus stop within a given window of time. So on high ridership routes, improving frequency reduces the passenger load on the individual trips. And it also makes the service more convenient to use, as people are more likely to be able to just have a bus passing by when they walk out to the street. Span is essentially the hours of operation on any given route. How early in the morning it runs, how late at night, and how many days per week. So we're looking to make our high ridership routes more convenient to use by making them available to our customers during more of the day and more of the week, early in the morning, late at night, on weekends, and so on and so forth. On our low ridership routes, our strategy is to reduce the frequency and span down to levels commensurate with demand, which may include elimination of the fixed route service. Now, remaining fixed route service on these corridors would be tied to the periods of the day when they produce the most ridership. This often tends to be shift times at major employment centers and other ridership generators. And this will be applied at a segment level, meaning that we'll preserve or increase service on the productive parts of low ridership routes while decreasing it on the unproductive parts. So for example, if you have a route connecting in a dense urban center that generates a great deal of ridership, travels through it, and then out to an area that doesn't produce as much ridership, we would be inclined to maintain or improve the service on the portion of the route that is productive. And most critically, the reduced or eliminated service would be augmented or replaced by a combination of CDTA's various mobility options, including Flex. So the areas with low transit propensity will still be connected to the transit system, but via a different mode that is better suited to their environments. And I will now turn it back over to Lindsay for a bit of a preview on what's coming up with Flex.
Thanks, Mike. So as you know, Mike and I both kind of mentioned, it's we're always trying to better our service. So Flex has become a nice tool for us that we can add into areas where maybe we don't feel we're providing the best service that we can, or in the situation that we're going to talk about here for our next Flex service, that we don't have service at all. So our next Flex is coming late summer of this year. It's a Southern Saratoga County pilot program that we're going to run. And the idea of this Flex service is to connect Mechanicville with Clifton Park. You can see the polygon that we've got drawn out here. Also the couple of the pin drops that we have outside of the polygon in northern part of Clifton Park. As Mike mentioned, larger employment opportunities, County Waste, Cisco Foods, US Foods, and also down in Half Moon Walmart, which we feel is going to be a pretty popular location for folks who want to take Flex to. So in an effort to keep the polygon tight, as we discussed earlier, to keep the system running efficiently, kept it nice and tight along Route 146 to make that connection. So folks will be able to use this service within the city of Mechanicville, or if they wanted to go back and forth between Clifton Park and Mechanicville. We worked with Supervisor Tom Richardson. We also worked with Southern Saratoga County Chamber to identify areas that we thought would be destinations for folks. The left-hand side of the polygon there is a strip of 146 that has a lot of medical offices, dental, pediatricians, general practitioners. We wanted to include that. We thought that might be somewhere where people would take a flex van to, as opposed to wanting to drive their own car or not having any other public transportation options. So those are kind of the components that went into designing this polygon. Right now, our plan for service hours for this polygon, again, is 3 service vans, as with the Colony, Gilderland Flex service, Monday through Friday, running from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. and Saturdays and Sundays, similar to our current Flex, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. We'll use this pilot program the first couple of months for getting Flex out on the road to work with the polygon, work with the service areas, talk with our partners, and really see how the service is running, where it's running to, when it's running, and make adjustments from there. So this is a look at our next Flex. We've talked about it with a bunch of groups. We haven't made a formal announcement. We are talking with our partners on when we want to make the formal announcement, but it is public knowledge that this is coming. So go ahead, Mike, next. A little more detail on what this the service polygon will provide. Some of the key pin drop locations that we wanted to make sure that we included on each section of them, you can see there. City Hall, Public Library, apartments, Price Shoppers, focus on medical doctor's appointments for people up in Mechanicville. And then similar down in Clifton Park, those bigger employment opportunities, Clifton Park Center, we know if people will want to go to. We see that down in our current Colony, Gilderland Flex services, that Northway Mall, Colony Center, Crossgates Mall. They're all very popular for people to ride Flex to. They don't have to park their car. They don't have to worry about navigating traffic. So we wanted to make sure that we included that. And as I mentioned before, the polygon being flexible is a really good tool for us in providing the best service using Flex and getting people where they want to go. So that's a look at what Flex has done so far, how kind of how we built it, how we continue to work on making it better. And our planning department really does a great job in working these in with fixed route, and also finding ways to put them into areas where we don't have service, such as this one up in Mechanicville and Clifton Park. So we're excited to get the new service on the ground and running later this summer, and we're continuing to work with our current service and make Flex a big part of what CDTA is doing moving forward. So again, appreciate everybody's time. Certainly available to answer any questions or get into more detail. And that's Flex for you.
Great, thank you, Lindsay and Mike. Does anybody have any questions for the presenters today?
I do.
Is that Liz? Go right ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, what's the age distribution of your ridership? I would see this as being very appealing to an older population that may not, maybe couldn't drive or doesn't want to drive to these locations.
We do have a very high population of that demographic who uses the service, mostly going, running their errands, going to the pharmacy, going to the grocery store, getting to and from doctor's appointments. And that was a big conversation that we had with the folks in Southern Saratoga County Flex service. You know, Mechanicsville doesn't have any public service up there. And so that was one of the things that Supervisor Richardson was very focused on, was having an opportunity for some of the elderly community to be able to use the service. On the flip side, however, we have seen a huge increase with the Colony Flex that the workforce is using it. We see a lot of connection to, like I said before, our BRT service. People will take Flex into the Polygon and then hop on a BRT and continue their ride, and vice versa. We have people who come down the Northway, they'll grab Flex at Latham Farms and then get down into Colony, Guilderland, go to the airport. So it is all across the board, but we, you know, to your point, we do see elderly folks using it quite often. I will also say that our Flex vans are wheelchair accessible. So we give folks that opportunity as well. Yeah, it's growing. We, the workforce, as I had mentioned before, as the pandemic has kind of taken its roller coaster route up and down is when people are out and about and when they kind of sheltered back at home. Once people started going back to work, we really started seeing areas like Corporate Circle out off 155 gain popularity for a Flex service. All those offices out there, as people started to infiltrate back in there, that became quite a popular location. We added pin drops up in the British American Boulevard office complex in anticipation that when those folks get back into the offices, that's going to be quite popular too. So we wanted to be prepared for that ahead of time.
I think it's a terrific program. Expand it quickly.
Yes, thank you.
We had one question in the chat pod. Has there been any shift from Star services to Flex? Any information on sort of the demographics from that perspective?
We have some carryover, but not a ton. I think the the Flex service, we really promote it as using the app. We do have about 20% of ridership that makes phone calls into CDTA that our dispatchers then input the rides. But we have a couple of customers who will pick and choose depending on the availability of Star. And the one difference though is that Star provides a door-to-door service, whereas Flex is curb to curb. So some of our Star customers need and like having that extra level of service right to their door, which Flex does, just stays at the curb. So that's one of the differential points between the two services.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you both very much. We'll move on to the next presentation. And the two presentations we heard thus far actually dovetail nicely into this discussion on the Transit Access Toolkit, because we had, there's a lot of land use transportation connection is obviously vital to transit. And I think the CDTA presentation really highlights the challenges of trying to provide transit services in low density areas. And we all know as planners how that relationship between land use and transit is mutually reinforcing. The higher density residential you have, the employment centers that are concentrated in certain areas of your community, the mixes of uses, your parking policies, the level of congestion, all of these things interrelate and drive up ridership and service that you're able to provide. And I wanted to highlight, a little bit about what happened during COVID for CDTA at a station level, because I think it's an important reminder about how different land uses do relate to the transit ridership. So system-wide, roughly 23% reduction in ridership during the time periods we analyzed pre and post COVID. That actually coincides pretty closely to the most recent estimated reduction in vehicle miles traveled in the region, which is also right around 23%. So I think we're zeroing in on, roughly a 23% reduction in overall travel, with the exception of things like bicycles and pedestrians, which we know likely increased during the COVID crisis. At a station level, I thought it was, interesting to point out a couple of things. Obviously CDTA has different ridership agreements with some of our major employers, like the state universities, University at Albany. So, it's to no one's surprise, given the situation at a school like the University at Albany, that the largest ridership drop was at the SUNY Albany Collins Circle. Pretty much 83% of the rides disappeared during the COVID crisis. When you look at essential businesses, a retail center like Crossgates Mall saw a 43% reduction. But a Walmart, which was largely open during the crisis, saw maybe 11% drop in Latham and a 21% drop at the Walmart over in Brunswick. So you saw some lower ridership reductions because those businesses were open the entire time. We also saw very large reductions in ridership in downtown Albany. So the Capitol building, Hawk Station, right in front of the state Capitol building, saw almost a 50% reduction in ridership. So you can see the sensitivity of office workers, students versus essential businesses, especially grocery. And major retailers. So just that in mind as we think through some of the issues surrounding transit and land use. And we as planners generally know these are, well-known strategies that facilitate better transit. We know we need to be thinking about multimodalism and urban revitalization and redevelopment of existing commercial and residential areas at a little higher density with a mix of uses. So creating those activity centers, and making sure things are walkable and bikeable, and also making sure the traffic, the buses essentially can flow through access management and other tools. I've been doing some research following our last meeting on some of the land use guidance that MPOs around the country, our peers, have produced. So just a few examples. On this screen, the Bay Area, which is the San Francisco area metropolitan planning organization, has established dwelling unit per acre thresholds based on land use typologies. So sort of the general thinking of the downtown core to maybe a city center area to a more suburban area, and what that land use density would need to be. Similarly, San Diego has TOD guidelines offering similar figures. On average, and most of these came from California. In the city of Charlotte, where they have light rail, they were looking at thresholds in terms of time. What's the time threshold that someone would be willing to wait to jump on a light rail system? So there's different ways MPOs have done this. This is another example from the Metropolitan Council in Minneapolis, where they focused in on residential density averages near transit stations and kind of came up with a number of units per acre based on the catchment area for the different types of services. And this graph was interesting from the perspective that it more closely mimics like what our region could, our transit services are. We have our first fixed route transit, meaning in our case, bus lanes. Exclusive bus lanes will be the purple line, which hasn't been opened quite yet. But it'll give you a sense, you know, thinking of that as the high end of what our region has to offer, our typical BRTs, and then ultimately fixed route and flex can be added to that. Perhaps we can develop some sort of a guidance on residential densities, on other types of densities, and also thinking about those activity centers that are so important to contributing to transit. You know I've spoken to folks in local government here, and there's some obvious constraints to transit supportive land use that we have to consider. You know, what is the market potential? Often that's out of local government control unless there's some intervention from the public sector to incentivize certain sorts of development. Maybe there's a need for some additional market studies that are community specific or corridor specific that can help us to better understand the market potential for development. Land availability is a challenge, particularly in our already built areas. Transformations are difficult in existing areas where you have, especially the way our region has developed over time with very small sites. There's multiple land owners. It's hard to assemble land for larger redevelopment. To get to some of these density thresholds, there's physical barriers ranging from, you know, environmental barriers like steep slopes to, as was mentioned in the earlier presentation, poor walking environment. And then there can be other factors like utilities or natural resources that could also serve as constraints. So for our purposes, one of the things that I wanted to discuss today is what would be our guiding principles for this toolkit. So these are just some ideas that I wanted to see what you folks were thinking, and that might help us to prioritize what data analysis we pursue and what area to target first. I'm sorry, my cat just jumped off my table to shake my computer. What areas to target for our research and supporting you folks at the community level for the information that would be of most use to you as you're developing comprehensive plans or updating your local zoning regulations or any other tools that you might have. So it's just a few examples. I mean, the obvious one, of course, is to increase the densities around transit stations and stops. We could establish transit supportive density goals based on, you know, our own local data. You know, this table on your screen is another example of what we could do. Obviously, we don't have light rail, so I lifted this from something from Seattle, but we could develop it based on our own types of transit. You know, we have the bus rapid transit, we have some commuter transit, fixed route, neighborhood, trunk routes, and then the flex services. So we could develop some density thresholds for various categories, activity units. You know, these are the kinds of metrics we could develop. We could also look at, you know, finding ways to better maximize land use potential within the watershed of a transit station, and maybe doing some more TOD studies focusing on these areas. You know, through our transportation demand management program, perhaps we can promote employment to locate in station areas on transit corridors. Maybe there's some materials we can put together when folks are making site selection decisions for a business, even if it's a small business. That could be sited, you know, adjacent to transit station areas. Obviously the mixed use and transit supportive design. And then alternatives to the automobile, you know, complementary multimodal services, you know, in addition to flex, we have the bike share program, we have perhaps a revamping of the car share program in the region, and then dealing with parking and how we're managing parking in the region. So that's just a brief overview of the kinds of things that we're thinking about, but based on what you've heard so far today, I'd like to hear from this group. What do you think, what data analysis should we pursue, and what would be the priority? You know, we're certainly open to working on a variety of different things. you know, having land use densities for different land uses, that would be just sort of a guidelines for your use, is something we could certainly produce. We'd have to think about the data analysis behind that. Obviously, we're all waiting for the census data to come out and see what that tells us. Anecdotally, we know that the COVID crisis, you know, has increased sort of residential demand in our region. We know a lot of folks are moving into folks are moving into the region and relocating here. And that was CDRPC shared some post office address change data to kind of reflect that. So, you know, one of the things that I would love to do is, you know, we may not have time today to get into this discussion, but I would like to set up a small group of folks who would be willing to have a conversation outside of these meetings to discuss sort of their local experiences, some of the challenges, some of the opportunities that might help us build a better toolkit. And so I'm looking for some volunteers. And if you are interested in participating in a conversation, please send me an email and we can set something up in the next month or two. And then that will help us to, again, zero in on what that data analysis could be, what would it be of most use to you, and build a better toolkit. So that's all I had on that subject. Did anybody have any questions about where we're going with the toolkit? Okay. So I'll be in touch with some of you if I don't hear from you first. But you know, I'm definitely looking for some volunteers to assist us with a conversation on what we can do to provide the best information we can to planners and our elected and local officials, help us build a better transit system for the region. Okay, in the interest of time, I know we're getting late, so I'm going to zip through the remainder of the agenda real quick. We have just a follow-up on the 2020 U.S. Census urban area boundary. Since we last met, our national organization called the Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations, in partnership with a number of other organizations, including APTA, the National Association of Counties, the National Association of Regional Councils, sent a joint letter in response to the Federal Register request for comments on the urban area boundary issue, focusing on a couple of things. One, that as proposed, using housing unit densities is going to be challenging depending on the type of region that exists. A region like ours that has a lot of land able to be developed on the fringe, you know, would get hurt essentially by how this census proposal was developed. Whereas a constrained place might have a different experience. And then, you know, we're lacking data to even be able to assess the proposed changes. So the letter that went to the register basically made two suggestions. One, delay implementation until we get access to data to better analyze the impact. And two, consider developing ways for NPOs and other organizations to provide feedback based on local data, because as we all know, the census data may not be the end all be all. There might be some better data locally in some parts of the country. So that's still an ongoing discussion. Just wanted to highlight that since we brought it up last time on where things are going with that. The main issue with that for CDTC's purposes is that this can ultimately impact our funding, because at least the analysis we've done so far based on 2010 census data would indicate our region would shrink by the official definition of urban area. So, so that's why this is important to CDTC. Two other quick updates. We are initiating the bus lane feasibility study with CDTA. Our first technical meeting is this week. We're going to be having a broader study advisory committee meeting in the next month or two. We expect activity on this project to ramp up very quickly in the next few weeks. A few months, I should say. So we'll be keeping you posted on that project. We also had an update on the Smart Communities Guidebook, which we will be bringing to your attention at future meetings of this group. As you recall, this was a document that we're trying to provide some best practice guidance to local governments in terms of implementing smart communities initiatives, different technologies that can assist and make transportation more efficient, other things more efficient in your community. They have selected WSP with River Street Planning for the contract. And they will be convening a committee pretty soon. So that project has also launched. We have a number of planning initiatives going on at CDTC right now, ranging from completion of the local bridge studies, some ADA self-evaluation projects are wrapping up. We are initiating the Patroon Creek Greenway Trail study in Albany County, which is a new trail that would line basically the I-90 corridor from the Hudson River out to Rensselaer Lake. NYSDOT will also be launching its New York's Route 378 bridge study, which is going to be looking at options, kind of reviewing the environmental conditions for either replacing that bridge in its current position or relocating it. And some of the underlying issues that all of that would entail. And we're also initiating a regional truck parking study that will likely be launched later this year. So there's a lot going on in planning at CDTC outside of linkage that I wanted to bring to your attention. Any questions on any of that before I move forward? Okay. Hearing none. The other thing I wanted to bring to your attention in terms of training and workshops is our new Complete Street summer webinar series. This is a webinar series that's part of our New Visions Learning webinar program. We're highlighting complete streets on a number of different fronts. Next week, Tuesday, June 15th, is the first in the series. The topic will be obstacles to implementing complete streets. July 13th, we will be having a presentation on demonstration projects for complete streets. And then in August, we will be updating folks on the Open Streets programs and what we've learned, where those might be going. You can register for all of these on our website and on the link on your screen. I will put this link in the chat pod so you have it. But we encourage you to register for these. We think they'll be very helpful if your community is pursuing complete streets or is interested in learning more about how folks are addressing complete streets and dealing with and overcoming some of the challenges to implementation. So we encourage you to attend. Get this link in the chat pod. There you go. There's other ongoing webinars, of course, at CDRPC. So I encourage you to check out CDRPC's website as well for the webinar series. And all of these are eligible for local government training credits if your community has approved them. So, keep that in mind as well if you're looking for content for your planning boards or your zoning board members to get their credits. And finally, are there any other state or local or regional planning updates that anybody wanted to share that would be of interest to the group? Okay, well, hearing none. Our next meeting, as of now, is scheduled for Wednesday, September 15th at 9:30 in the morning. We will be making all of the meeting materials, including the video, available for your review within the next week or so. We do have a webpage now dedicated to this planning forum, so you can find all of our meeting materials, meeting summaries, agendas on cdtcmpo.org/planner forum. So I encourage you to check out our webpage. In the meantime, if there's nothing else that anyone wanted to raise today, I would like to say just thank you once again.
Andy.
Yes, go right ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to put a plug in for the Ditch the Car Challenge, which is going to be launching today. So the Ditch the Car Challenge is in place of the Bike to Work Challenge that we normally do every year, and it's going to be starting today and running through October 8th. And it is, you could go on the website and sign up and log all of your bike, walk, bus, flex, carpool trips that would replace your car trips, and you can earn badges and cool prizes. There's a social media raffle, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So it's on our website, cdtcmpo.org/ditch the car.
Great. When that goes live, I'll make sure everybody on as part of this group gets the link.
Thanks.
Okay. So again, if there's nothing else today, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your summer. I believe we'll be keeping this meeting virtual, possibly going to hybrid in September. Maybe there'll be some of us in our conference room at CDTC, but we'll continue to offer a virtual option, as I certainly have noticed the attendance has been a lot higher. So we'll keep that in mind moving forward. But thank you again and enjoy the rest of your summer if I don't see you before. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.